May what I do flow from me like a river, no forcing and no holding back. Rainer Maria Rilke. Welcome, Seth, to the In Her Image podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
From all the way over in the other side of the house comes my husband, Seth Burdette. He has been a supporter and ally of me as I've undergone this Heavenly Mother seeking journey for this past year plus, maybe 2 years now almost. And he also is currently serving in our ward's bishopric as a second counselor. So he also is kind of my voice a little bit in some cases, sharing with the ward council and with the bishop some great ideas for how we can implement Heavenly Mother and just listen to women in general a little bit more. So I've really appreciated that. And I'm excited to hear your perspective.
Well, I'm happy to be here. It's been cool seeing you through this whole journey and the process.
There's been a lot of ups and downs for sure. I would love to hear a little bit more detail just of how it's been from your perspective or what your experience has been like being by my side as I've gone through this.
Sure. I guess the overall takeaway from it is it's been enlightening for me and pretty inspiring to kind of see you come into your own element and have something that you're passionate about and excites you and motivates you. I think that's important to pursue our passions. And so that's been inspiring for me to kind of see this change come over in you with, you know, this sweet little Jess that everybody knows has some fire and some spunk and passion in there, which has been really, really cool to see come alive in you. Overall, I would say the experience has been very positive. Over the last 4 years or so, I think we both have gone through a bit of a faith transition where we've reevaluated things and taken a closer look at things that were at one point kind of no-brainers for me, at least for me, and reevaluated a lot of things. And I think your path in seeking Heavenly Mother has kind of been a consequence of that as well, where we're thinking a little bit harder about things that we believe in the church and whatnot. But it's been a good experience. It hasn't been necessarily simple or easy, and not all moments are good, but I think the overall trajectory has been positive.
I agree. I think that our faith is better for the seeking and searching and reaching, even though it's been hard at times and painful to go through transitions. I'm very grateful for it. I'm grateful that you are willing to do that hard thinking and introspection as well and able to engage with me in that way. So I've got a few questions from some of my followers over on Her Scriptures Instagram. We did a Sharing Heavenly Mother panel event back in the summer of 2021, and we had a men's panel event, and Seth was on that, and so I asked for questions, kind of polled my audience, and so these came out of that, and I just wanted to ask a few of them here because I don't think that you touched on them during the panel, and the panel is not available to watch via replay anyway. So some of those that I got were, what is the best way to help our husbands understand why she is so important to us?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about that question. You gave me a little preview of it before we started. And honestly, I think, and this maybe is not what everyone wants to hear, but I think the best way is to explain it to them, to tell them why it matters, you know, and I think it matters differently for different people. Not all women are passionate about it, but not all women that are, even the ones that are passionate, aren't all doing it for the same reasons, right? It's an individual thing. It's an individual journey. And so the best way to get your husband to understand why it's important to you is to tell him why it's important to you. The biggest changes for me, or my own interest, or my allyship, I guess you could call it, have come mostly because I can see how important it is to you, Jessica. We talk about it all the time. Like, it's, if not daily, at least weekly, we'll have long talks about it when you are vulnerable, open up to me about the things that are important to you. And I think that's been the most convincing or powerful thing to me. And even if I don't understand all of it, or it's difficult for me to relate to some of the things, I see that it's important to you because you've expressed it to me in your actions and in your words. But I see it's important to you, and I value you. And so by association, it's important to me, or at least I want to help facilitate a world that can be fulfilling for you as well. Mm-hmm. So I'd say the best thing to do is to be vocal about it, share those feelings. It's difficult for husbands to read minds, and especially on a topic like this, where it may be a little bit out of left field for a lot of men, because being a woman's not a world that we're very familiar with. And so for us, it's like Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ have always been right in front of us. Like, it's very easy for a man to see himself in the divine. And by extension, I think a lot of times we think like, oh, if I can see myself in the divine, and I believe that men and women are equal, then like surely they would see themselves in the divine too, without, kind of thinking like, oh, well, maybe they need to see the female divine to see themselves in the divine.
Yeah. And I think I would just say to that wife who's saying, what's the best way to help my husband understand? I would say too, like, that takes a lot of vulnerability, even to your spouse. It can be scary to open up like that and be so raw, because it's something that can come with a lot of emotion and can feel really important to you. But just to trust that, your husband married you for a reason. He loves you. He wants the best for you. And so to trust him enough to open up, and then to give it time. Maybe the first conversation, like you said, it'll feel like it's like, where is this coming from? I don't relate to this. But as you give it a little time and let it work on their heart, I think they'll have experiences and thoughts and realizations along the way as well. And so definitely don't just leave it at one conversation. Let them think about it. And you actually shared a really great analogy with me a while back about this. And I've shared this before in a couple places, but I would love to have you share it in your own words, in your own voice here on the podcast to be immortalized. What is your analogy for letting people catch up?
Yeah, so this is something I realized back in my dating days. Well, I guess I'm still in my dating days because I'm dating you. But when I was dating more than just you, or before I was dating you.
Before marriage, we'll say.
Yeah, my pre-marriage dating days. Okay. That's a better way to put it. So back then I was trying to find my Jessica, looking in all the wrong places. But part of what I realized was, so I would ask out these girls and get like excited about them, and then things would kind of fizzle out, or maybe I would be overbearing, or, I would want to like see them a bunch of times. And that I was starting to realize that maybe I was being a little bit much for early on in the relationship. But for me, it was like, oh, well, I feel good about this girl. Like, I want to see her more frequently. And I realized that typically the person that initiates has been thinking about that person for maybe a couple weeks. And so they're emotionally, or they're into the relationship further than the other person is. And so like if I meet this girl and I want to ask her out, I would typically think about her for like a week or two before actually asking her out, maybe longer. But for that girl getting asked out, it's coming out of left field. It's like this potentially could be like totally out of the blue. And so if I realize that I'm a couple weeks ahead of the relationship, then, initiate the contact and then let it sit for a little while and let the other person catch up. And that tended to work a little bit better, I think. But I think it applies here as well. If you want your husband to relate to you, introduce him, to how you're feeling, share those special feelings, the things that are close to your heart, and express that to him, and then give him time to sit on it and think about it and let him kind of catch up to you. And then you could reintroduce the idea or talk about it again. One thing I wanted to add to what you had said, Jess, was I think it's definitely being vulnerable and sharing, but then it's also important to not make someone else feel like they have to have the same feelings as you. Where, like you may feel very passionately about Heavenly Mother and wanting her to be more seen in the church or in your home life or your faith. And to you, that may feel like the only right path. Like there could be no other correct solution. But I think it's important to not make someone who's not feeling that way feel like they have to feel that way or they're wrong or they're less. Or does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think it's so important to share and to let your voice be heard, but not to make someone feel like they have to agree with you immediately.
Yeah. I think it's going to be just like any other doctrine of the gospel, right? Where, like as a missionary, if I'm going out and sharing about Jesus Christ for the first time to people, I can testify of my love for Jesus Christ, my belief in him, how important I think it is for everybody to love and believe in him. But I can't force anybody else to have the same experience or the same feelings or testimony as I do. But I think that sharing does plant that seed, and we have to allow everybody to have their own journey, and everybody's journey is going to look different. So I think that's an important point, to not expect a husband, a friend, a mom, whoever it might be that we're sharing this with, not expect them to just automatically see it the same way we do. And yeah, they have to have their own journey too. So thanks for adding that. Another question that we got was, how do we make discussions about Heavenly Mother relevant for men? How do we get them excited and involved? So I feel like that's a little bit related. Like, okay, I've talked to so-and-so and like, don't care or seem to care, or like, why can't they see that this is a big deal? Because for us who are seeking her, it does feel like a big deal. It's like we've got this God that we've known about for a long time and yet not said anything about her. And, like, why do we have this God that we never talk about or worship at all? So how do we kind of pique interest, I guess?
Yeah, that's the question. I think it kind of comes down on it's kind of another unfulfilling answer in that everybody's going to be different. So there's things that are going to appeal to different people. I know listening to the other panel discussions, there's some men that relate very strongly to a divine feminine entity, right? A Heavenly Mother, like that's very powerful for them to connect with her. And for other people, that may not be as big of a motivating aspect, or, like they may not be craving that connection right now. And so I don't think there's like a magic button that you can press and that like the lights will turn on for everybody and everybody will be like equally on this path. I think if that button was there, it probably would have been pressed already by somebody.
Dang it.
Yeah. But I think it's, you know, the examples of the men and women who are seeking and their faith and them being willing to open their mouth and to share their life experiences. I think that's what will change hearts and will mainstream it, where, you know, if more and more people are willing to talk about it, then it'll get talked about more. And the people who are very interested it'll be more readily available to them, which will help. I think, you know, there's a little bit of a cultural barrier to overcome in all this as well. And changing cultures takes time. Changing culture is, I think, an issue of decades and years as opposed to like months and weeks.
Yes. As those of us who have been seeking her for longer than a minute know. And we've had Carolyn Pearson on this podcast, who has been doing this work for decades and decades. And others have as well. Other scholars, poets, writers have been sharing about Heavenly Mother. But I feel like now we've got this wave. MacArthur Krishna was also on the podcast. She is great at kind of hurdling those barriers of the myths. And she's doing really great work there. But she calls it a tsunami. This cannot be stopped. It's huge. And yet, those moments of frustration or sadness when there is a hurdle, there is a barrier, those can be really, really squelching. I don't know the right word. And I really wanted you to also share this other analogy that you shared with me after one such instance when I came home from an interaction that did not go how I hoped it would. And I was just crushed and distraught and like, there's no hope. And why do I even try? Like, I think I cried all the way home on our like 25-minute drive. And when we got home and we're still just talking it out, you shared with me this analogy that has been really, really powerful to me. So, enter analogy number 2.
Okay. Yeah, so this is, I guess, kind of the way I view this whole movement, and I guess you could call it a movement. It's a change, it's a cultural change, and hopefully down the line some doctrinal updates, I guess. But as we were talking, I had the kind of the vision or idea of, you know, the Grand Canyon is one of the most incredible natural wonders in the world. You know, this massive ravine that's been dug into the earth. And it wasn't, you know, dynamite or shovels or anything that dug this. It was a river. And if you look at the river, it's actually a very small river compared to the canyon itself, in terms of like, it's way down there at the bottom. Like, it's, you know, the canyon is huge compared to this little river, but the river carved that canyon. It was over time, and it took just steady, consistent wearing away at the rock over years, and in the case of the Grand Canyon, centuries, millennium, you know, thousands of years. The steady pressure of the river carved this massive Grand Canyon that can never be filled. Like, it would be, you know, this enormous undertaking to try to fill up the Grand Canyon again. That little river caused irreparable change to the landscape. And I think that's what it will take for the Heavenly Mother to become more mainstream, is the steady, consistent pressure from men and women who are seeking and are passionate of them lifting up their voices and not giving up, keeping at it, even when it's difficult, even when it's hard. You don't have to be dynamite. You don't have to, yell and scream and, burn stuff down. But the steady, constant pressure, I think, is what will reach hearts, what will build a movement where, people will join because they say, oh, this is not going away. So I'm going to, hitch my wagon to this because it's progressing, it's moving forward, it's getting bigger, it's not going away. So I know, at times it's discouraging because we're not seeing the Grand Canyon right away. But as long as the water keeps flowing, I think the canyon will get dug out.
I love that analogy so much. I was wishing that night that it would be dynamite, not because I do want to rage out sometimes about it, but mostly because it would be quick. I just want the change now. I want people to open their eyes now and make the changes. What are we waiting for? So that was really helpful to me because you also mentioned the first time you shared it to me, how beautiful the Grand Canyon is because of the way that it was carved. And that it would not look the same, right, if it was just blasted out by dynamite. And so this is creating something that I believe, each little person is just maybe even just a drop in this river, but together we are co-creating something that is grand and glorious and far greater than any one of us. And I love the river part because that is such a feminine symbol, and just the word flow is just so fitting. So I really, really latched on to that, and thank you for sharing it here. One more question that we had from somebody on Instagram was, how are you using the power and privilege you have as a man in the church to help make church a safe place where Heavenly Mother can be spoken of, testified of, taught about, etc.?
Yeah, so I have a huge advantage in this category. Number one, because I'm married to Jess Burdette, and so all of my good ideas have really been hers. And, all the inspiration for all of it comes from her. The second advantage I have is that I am in the bishopric, and I'm very good friends with the bishop. And so I speak my mind to him all the time. And we've had lots of discussions about Heavenly Mother, and especially about how to involve the women in the church and give them a bigger voice. And that goes from how do we make sure in ward council that the organizations that are led by women are having that voice in ward council, all the way to including directly Heavenly Mother in our sacrament meetings. I was assigned with creating the sacrament program for the sacrament for the month of May, and Mother's Day falls in that month. And so I had, Jess and I had kind of talked about that her dream, for Mother's Day would be to have a Heavenly Mother topic talked about on Mother's Day. And so I'd been thinking about that and thought, that would be a great topic, and I get to plan it. And so we talked with the bishop and went through several rounds with him about proposing the idea and having, the topic just be Heavenly Mother. And after a little while, it became apparent that Jess was the natural choice to give the talk. And so we did a couple more rounds of iterations of her proposing kind of outlines of what she wanted to talk about and some of the quotes she wanted to use. And we did all that mainly to help the bishop be comfortable with what was going to get said. There's kind of the impression in the church that there's not much known about Heavenly Mother, or there's not much to say. And so helping him understand what the talk was actually going to be about really kind of helped. And Jessica gave an amazing talk, and you should, if you haven't listened to it yet, you're missing out. I think it's still on your Instagram.
It is.
Yeah. So if you haven't listened to it yet, pause right now and go listen to it, and then you can come back and finish this podcast, because it's a good one. And since then, we've, as a bishopric, talked a lot about including women and more in the church and Heavenly Mother. The bishop and I have both borne testimony in church and used heavenly parents in testimonies before. And kind of the purpose of that is to normalize it, people hearing it, and to get people associating, God as a Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother, or this idea, bringing her into the church, even though, we're not necessarily teaching anything about her from those examples, but helping it be more mainstream, I think.
Yeah, just using her name.
Yeah, using her name. Yeah.
And I think any way that we can include women more, help them be more seen, more heard, including Heavenly Parents or Heavenly Mother in our testimonies and talks. It might seem like a small thing, but it makes a big difference to those of us who are feeling the lack of inclusion. It really does. So I hope that many, many people will hear this and think of ways you can help the women in your wards, stakes, etc. to feel more empowered. And I think there are so many ways to do that are really quite simple. It can really just be a slight change in vocabulary. Yeah,
definitely. One thing that I would add that's helped us a lot as well is our Relief Society president is very on board. A couple years ago, they made some changes with the bishopric, and that put a lot more responsibility into the hands of the Relief Society president and the Elders Quorum president, where they really run the ward. I didn't realize that until coming into the bishopric, but the Elders Quorum and the Relief Society are really the ones that run the ward. The bishopric just kind of looks over their shoulders to kind of make sure everything is kind of going, but the ones that really drive all the stuff that's happening in the ward is the Relief Society and the Elders Quorum. And so talking to your Relief Society president is a really good first step. She will be a woman, first off, and so could at least maybe understand where you're coming from easier than perhaps your bishop or your Elders Quorum president or whoever else, or maybe even your husband. But talking and expressing those feelings to your Relief Society president, I think, is a great place to start as well.
Yes, and the way that she was first exposed was when I was preparing to release this podcast. I shared, so it was when they were just opening up, having in-person meetings for the first time since COVID, and we did a Relief Society activity, and part of it was just a getting to know you, like a re-getting to know you. We don't even know half the ward anymore because a bunch of people have moved in and out. So we went around and everybody got to say their name, where they're from, and something about them. And I was just so on fire and excited about this, all this study and interviews and stuff I had been doing, that I just couldn't help but share. I said, I am Jessica and I am starting a podcast. And of course they're like, oh, what's the podcast? It's going to be called In Her Image, and it's all about Heavenly Mother. And that's all I said. And our Relief Society president looked at me and said, wow, that's really great. When you release it, you should share it on our Relief Society Facebook group. And so I said, okay, I will. And that was the start of a beautiful relationship where I did post when we first launched the podcast, and she listened, and she's been listening to the episodes, and she approaches me at church pretty frequently to tell me what she learned or what she realized from her own life was probably Heavenly Mother's influence. And there's another way that anybody can share this, just sharing your own thoughts and experiences, or saying, hey, I listened to this podcast episode. Will you listen and chat with me and tell me what you think? If there's something that like really inspires you. So there's another idea. Is there any other words of advice or wisdom that you'd like to share before we end?
Just don't quit. Don't give up. And maybe that's empty coming from a man, but I think the contribution that you're making is you, not just Jessica, but you as in all of your listeners, are making is important. And I think it's valuable to the church, and the church being the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And I think that your voices are important and that they need to be heard. And just, even if it's hard, press forward. And, you know, the change, I think, well, I can see changes happening, and maybe it's in our local area, but I think I see them in the general church as well, where, you know, Heavenly Parents is pretty openly said now. Like, there's lots of church publications that say Heavenly Parents, you know, the new change in the Young Women's theme from Heavenly Father to Heavenly Parents. I think the change is happening, and it's slow and painful, but without these voices, I think it would be a lot slower and worse. Mm-hmm. So keep going, don't give up, band together, you know, share the successes, and don't quit.
Thanks. We won't. I won't. I'm in this. I'm too invested now. Although it is very hard sometimes. Thank you for everything that you've shared. Thanks for being on the podcast.
My pleasure.
I think you're pretty great. I hope a lot of people can take courage and follow your example.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for choosing to spend some time with us today. We love this community and would be thrilled to hear from you. Please leave us a review. To offset the cost of recording and producing this podcast, you can make a monthly donation at anchor.fm/inherimage/support. We hope you'll subscribe and join us again next Sunday for another inspiring episode. I said I'm starting a podcast soon.
I need a diaper change.
Did you? Okay, just a minute, okay, bud?
Okay.
That's the first time that's happened, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, it's stinky. Okay, we're going to wrap this up though first.
Okay. That they need to be heard. And even if...
After we do breakfast, I want to do the train one.
Oh, we'll do that.
But it's called
the Polar Express.
It's called the Polar Express.
Okay, go stand back there. Okay.
Do 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 do. Do 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 do.